Well, I didn't get to start the new year, but as I said last week, we sort of, in our household anyway, deleted about 6 or 7 days off the calendar for the beginning of the new year. And so I'm starting something new today. We're kind of embarking on a journey today. We're going to do a series called Walking Through the Word. And if you have a bulletin, you see that's the title of Walking Through the Word. And basically what we're going to be doing is going to be an overview of the Bible, book by book. And it's not going to be a detailed look at every little scripture. We're not going to read through every chapter. If you want to do that, then I encourage you to come on Wednesday. That you can get more in-depth talking about that kind of stuff. This is going to be more of what we get from God's story, book by book. And we'll be spending some Sundays on a whole book of the Bible. A couple books here and there might take 2 Sundays. But it will not be looking at things. So I encourage you to read. If you ever want to start kind of reading through the Bible and just reading through the Bible in a year, this would be a good time to start that. Just start reading through the Bible, because some of the stories and some of the things that I may mention, if you don't know them, then you'll at least have an idea of them if you're reading through it. I don't have a reading plan or anything. There are tons of reading plans to read through the Bible out there. Online, in the backs of Bibles and study Bibles, you find lots of different reading plans that get you through reading the Bible. One thing I told kids this morning, if you want a quick way, and some of you might think, oh, this is just crazy, but this is a Bible, and it's called the Action Bible. It's basically in graphic novel, comic book format. We've been reading this, this is our Bible that we read to Josiah at night, and it's got a lot of detail of the stories, but it's also done in a way it's a quick read. You can get through several chapters a whole lot quicker in this format. This I actually got at the Hearne library. And so that's just one way that you just kind of get through things a lot quicker and get the full picture, because that's what we're talking about, is the story of God. And that's what it is. It's not a story as in fictional, but this is God's narrative. It's His story to us. And we kind of want to see that, because for so long we've talked about the laws and the rules and looked at proof texts for trying to prove things that we already kind of have thought. But that's not what we're doing. We want to look at what is God's story to us. Before we begin, though, we're going to start in Genesis at the beginning, and we're going to look at Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. It's basically what we're going to look at today. And before we get there, I want to kind of ask a question. Why do we have kids? You haven't figured that out yet. What does that play? Why do we have kids? I mean, we know that things are going to go wrong. They're going to disobey. They're going to get hurt. They're going to sometimes devastatingly wrong. Unfortunately, I mean, you lose kids, and you see kids doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and yet we keep having kids. And everybody knows going in, this could go terribly, horribly, utterly wrong. But we still have weddings, and we still get married, and we still have kids, even though things can go horribly wrong. Why? Why do we keep doing that to ourselves? Well, I ask this because why did God create the world? People ask us sometimes, why in the world did God create why did He do it? Why would He create the world? He doesn't need us. Does He really? He's thinking there, I'm just lonely. I need some entertainment. I'm just going to put you guys on there and see how bad you can be, and just I'll sit up there and laugh at all the different things that y'all just do, and you think you can get it right. Well, I'm going to say, why do we have kids? The easy answer is, without it, you miss the opportunity to love. Without the chance, you don't have the opportunity to love and to be loved. And I think that goes to the creation story right there. It's about the opportunity to love and to be loved. I just wanted to say that before we start into, because the main story we're going to read today is the temptation of Eve. Satan's temptation of Eve. And so much of this goes into what Genesis boils down to. And really what the Bible boils down to is what happens here and the temptation with Satan and Eve. So let's just read the verses. The serpent was the shrewdest of all the wild animals the Lord God had made. One day he asked the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat the fruit from any of the trees in the garden?" "Of course we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden," the woman replied. "It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we are not allowed to eat. God said, you must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die. You won't die, the serpent replied to the woman. God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God, knowing both good and evil. All right, there's a lot going on in there. And it really is the essence of a lot of things that go on in the book of Genesis. The serpent. Satan, we see as a serpent. No snakes. How many people in here like snakes? Anybody in here like snakes? Oh, we got a couple people. Okay, you have the right to be wrong. That's all I'm saying, okay? Nobody else in here raised their hands. Snakes are, you can go, has anybody ever been to the Waco Zoo and they got the herpetarium with all the, it's dark and it's kind of spooky and Di's back there going, yeah, I love that place, man. I go in there and knock on the cages and get them to move around. Snakes are tricky creatures and they're hard to see and they're hard to has anybody ever stepped on a snake? Stepped on a snake? What happens when you step on a snake? You fly, right? You figure out that humans can fly, right? Snakes are hard to see. And they're hard to see coming. They're good at camouflage, and they're good at subtle. They're good at hiding, and then all of a sudden, boom! They jump out and they got you, right? Because they're hard. They're hard to see. And Satan is good at that. There was a preacher that visited up in Tennessee. He was invited to go and talk to a church in the hills of Tennessee. And he's prepping to start talking, and some guys walk in with a couple of boxes, and they dump out a bunch of snakes in front of him. And he realized, oh, this is one of the churches that handles snakes. And they do all kinds of things with snakes. And he turned to the guy over there, and he says, do you guys have a back door? And he said, no. And he said, where do you want one? Snakes are, they're historically, and it starts here, they historically don't have good relationships with us. And this is kind of why. Satan tells lies right here. And he tells 5 lies that we're going to look at to Eve. And it's lies that we keep believing. And it's lies that he continues to tell people. And it's the lies that people in Genesis and the stories in Genesis they have to continue to struggle with. And the question that boils down in Genesis is, will you believe God or will you believe one of these 5 lies of Satan? What are you going to do? And that's basically what a lot of Genesis and a lot of the Bible really boils down to. So we're going to look at these lies of Satan. The first lie he says is, did God really say? An alternate way of saying this is, say what? Say what? This is like saying, what? What did he say? Did God really say this? The essence of this lie is doubting God. Can you really believe what God said? You can't trust God's word. Did he really say? He did. You can't trust him. You know what gets me is we follow instructions really well. Well, some of us do. We follow instructions. We read our DVD player instructions. Some of you maybe still VHS. You don't have to work the VHS player still. And we read the instruction books, or we get these instructions from IKEA to put all these things together. What happened to it's like the lights all of a sudden?
Give me the light.
Oh, okay, thanks. So we put all these instructions together. On Christmas Eve, we were putting together a kitchen. We got our boys a big one of those big play kitchens for Christmas. And we get this manual, and we had it shipped to us in a box. And it was a 36-step process. And it has pictures, no words, just pictures showing you where the screws go and all the arrows. It took us like 2.5, 3 hours to put the thing together. And we're following the thing step by step by step because you don't want to mess anything up. And it's amazing how we do that, but we don't follow anything God says. We don't follow God's instructions. We don't do that because you can't trust God's word, Satan says. You can't trust what he says. And it's not just what he says, but a little second part of this, he's saying, did God say to you? Did God say that to you? And so we think God really doesn't speak to us. You know, the world says, well, we can go and talk to mediums and talk to our dead ancestors, or we can read our horoscope in the paper, and it's okay if we follow that and do that and believe that. But if anybody in here says, well, Jesus told me this, they look at you like you're nuts. They look at you like you're crazy. No, God doesn't say anything to you. And this is one of Satan's original lies. Did God say this to you? Casting doubt on God's authority and on his truthfulness. God doesn't say things to you, but we have to read the Bible through the lens of Jesus, because Jesus is the Word. He's the Word himself. And so we got to believe that God says to us and that God talks to us. And this is a lie that Satan has continued to try to build up. Next, he says you must not eat. Did God say you must not eat from any tree? Now, we all know that he didn't say this. You know, we know these stories. We're familiar with it. God didn't tell him this. And Eve is pretty, she tells him in here, no, he didn't tell us. He didn't tell us that. She knows that that's not what God said. But the devil loves to expand on God's word. He loves to overspeak for God. And then we take that lie and we just go with it because we're good at that. But basically this lie, the subtext behind what he's saying is God is unfair. God's unfair. That's what he's saying. He's saying God doesn't want you to have fun. He wouldn't create something so great and then tell you not to do it. You know, he's telling you, this is Satan saying, look, but don't touch. And God makes these rules for you. Oh, you can look, but you don't touch. You can taste, but you can't like it. You can't enjoy it. This is what the lies of Satan says. God is so unfair to you. He makes you jump through all of these hoops and makes you have all of these requirements. But why would you do that? But we eat that lie. We eat that lie, and we think God doesn't want us to have any fun, right? We think God, then the world is big on this. The world eats this stuff up. Christians can't have any fun. You get married, and you're not happy, so you just dump them. Now it's commonly said, well, if you don't approve of my behavior, then you must hate me. If you don't approve of what I do, then you must hate me. Because God's unfair. He doesn't let you have any fun. And we keep eating this lie, and we keep over-speaking for God. You know, probably we've done this for many, many years. You remember all the tracts that used to be in churches, and there are different things about dancing and drinking and gluttony and all of these things, and we think, okay, well, you can't be drunk, and so that means you can't take one sip of wine ever. But you know what? If that's the case, then you can't if you take one bite of the sweetest dessert that you've ever imagined, oh, that'll lead to gluttony. You know, don't ever eat one bite because that'll lead to gluttony. Oh, don't ever have one glance of anything because that'll lead to having multiple marriages. That'll lead to polygamy. And we say that. We say we overspeak for God, and we make laws where God doesn't make laws because we say, oh, God is unfair to us and he doesn't want us to have a lot of fun. And so we overspeak for him because we buy this lie. And Eve does it. Eve is the first one to do it. She tells him, look at what she tells him. She tells him, oh, he said we couldn't he said we couldn't eat it. We can't even touch it. But did God tell her that? God didn't tell her they couldn't touch it. God told, don't eat from the tree. But then she says, don't even touch it. We can't even touch that fruit. You see, over-speaking for God because God's unfair and he just wants us to just sit there and do nothing and never enjoy life. And Satan continues to have us believe this. 3, you will not die. You will not die. This is the third lie that he tells us. You won't die. And this is the myth I think that teenagers really understand. They really get this myth. This is the reason why you think, okay, I can take that on-ramp at 70 miles an hour. Well, let's go do it. I mean, this is the lie that we really believe, right? Does anybody believe, or anybody read the Sunday comics? Am I the only one that reads the Sunday comics? Oh, you're not copping to it. Okay. One of the comics that I really like, and I think I wrote it, one of the ones that I really like is Zits. Does anyone know Zits? They're going to have a whole book of Zits comic strip. This is about, basically it's about teenage boy Jeremy Duncan, and it's about his life and his interactions with his parents and all the little trouble and things that he gets into, and it really is a commentary on social media and the teens of today. But there are funny things that happen. I'm going to show you a little comic strip of Jeremy Duncan. You can see what's going on in that comic strip. If you can't see it, I'll read you what he says. But if you can't see it, he's got a little snow ramp set up here, and the van's upside down in the tree. And he's telling his dad, so Dad, you know how sometimes something that seems like a really good idea turns out to be not such a good idea? And the friend's here with the cell phone taking a picture. Click. And this is the essence of really what this slide's talking about. He's talking about there's not going to be any consequences. Don't worry, there's no consequences for whatever you do. And you don't think about the consequences for behavior. I don't know how old Adam and Eve were. I assume maybe they were at least teenage. They had to be at least reproductive age because God tells them, be fruitful and multiply. So they had to be made to be at least that old. But you're thinking, if they're teenagers, yeah, I'm thinking they just jump into trying things, right? Oh, this lie speaks to them. Don't worry, there's no consequences. Do it. And we do this. We do this too. It's not just teenagers because we do it. I read an article last week in the paper dealing with consequences. And it was about, maybe some of you read it, it was about Apple. Apple's having to pay $32 million out in a lawsuit to a group of parents, a group of people that are suing Apple because their kids went and bought several, in some cases, I guess, hundreds of dollars worth of stuff on the phones through their apps. They went and purchased things, and people said, well, you didn't tell us that they could do this, and our kids shouldn't be able to do this, and so now Apple's paying them all this money. The thing is, if you don't know anything about smartphones, the thing is that every time that you buy something, you have to enter a password on the phone. And so a parent had to hand their kid had to hand something to the parent and say, put in your password for anything to happen. And yeah, okay, we know kids lie. Maybe, you know, they can get away with things. But at what point do we say there's consequences for me making a decision without asking, okay, here, just put in my password, and then you can have fun with the apps and just fill them all in and spend all my money. But at what point do we say, well, I did something and there's consequences for my action? No, we could go sue and tell them, you're supposed to have all of these things that don't allow my kid to do that. That's basically what they're telling Apple is, it's not my fault. You should have had more safety measures so that my kid can't do it. Even though I give them a password, they can't do it. But it's this lie that removes consequences from behavior. And that's really what is going on here. That there's whatever's good for you is fine. Whatever's good, whatever you want to do is fine. Whatever makes you feel better, you can do. No. We know that God says no. The truth is that everybody is going to die, and there's going to be consequences for everything you do, and some things aren't okay to do. But we eat this up. We eat this lie up that, oh, I can just do whatever I want, and I'll feel okay with it, and well, I'll just deal with it down the road, and I'll pass the buck, and it will be all right. Just somebody else is going to be to blame because there's no consequences. And this is the lie that gets eaten up. You won't die. It's just, tell him, it's okay. It's okay. Nothing will happen. Next, he tells her, God knows your eyes will be opened. God knows your eyes will be opened. This lie says there's some stuff that God doesn't want you to know. There's some stuff that God just doesn't want you to know. He's keeping some stuff from you. God's the liar. He's keeping the good stuff from you, says Satan. Oh, he doesn't want you to know there's some things down there. And the more things, the world says, oh, God, the more things that we want is what you should be given to us. They say, well, why do Christians get cancer, but they don't win the lottery? And he's keeping the good things from us. God is keeping the good stuff from you. God doesn't really want a relationship with you. He doesn't really want to know who you are because he's just keeping the good things from you. This is what people struggle with throughout the book of Genesis and throughout the Bible. God doesn't really want to know who you are. He's just like a puppet master. He's just pulling strings just to laugh, just to get his giggles up there. This is the lie that he's telling you. But, of course, this is refuted over and over again in the Bible. That's why this verse is up there. There are tons of things I'm sure God knows and we don't. Okay, he's God. We're not God. He's God. But not the important things. He says, since he did not spare even his own son, but gave him up for us all, won't he also give us everything else? And he gave his son to us. The things that we really need, in life, he's going to give us. He's going to give us. And that's what we need to know, that he will give us the things that we need. But we keep going back to this. Oh, there's some stuff that he just doesn't want to give us. He's not good to me. And Satan keeps pulling that lie out. And these basic ones are the ones he uses. Pulls these lies up over and over again. And the last one, he says, you will be like God. His last lie says, you will be like God. This, I think, is his greatest lie. His greatest lie. Because ultimately he's saying you can be your own God. You can be your own God. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that, right? Who doesn't want to be their own God? And I know we're sitting here saying, oh, I don't want it. I don't want to be my own God. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with all the headaches of dealing with all of us people. But look at how subtle this really is when you look at it. We say we don't want to be God. We say we don't want to be our own gods. But let's say, for example, that for hundreds of years, or for at least 100 years, churches have been dividing and been splitting up over things. They've been splitting up over music. This one's happy clappy. This one likes the gospel choir. This one likes the old hymns. This one likes instruments. This one doesn't like instruments. And they've been splitting up over all this stuff for 100 years. And really it boils down to, I like this, and this is the way I want it, and it's my preference, and we fight over it. We go to war over it because it's about power. Because it's about, I want what I want, and it doesn't matter what you want. And that's the essence of what he's saying here. You want to be your own God. You want power. You want what you want and not anything else. This is about Frodo and Gollum and the power of the ring. And if you don't understand that cultural reference, we need to lift you out of that rock that you've been under, because this is one of the biggest things in the last 10 years in terms of movies is Frodo and Gollum and the ring. And the ring of power. That's what it is called. It's called the ring of power. Because you want to be your own God. You want the power. And we're all going to worship something. We're going to worship money, we're going to worship success, we're going to worship pleasure, we're going to worship food. And being our own God means I can do whatever I want. It doesn't matter what you want. And so we want to be God because we want power. We say, no, I'm not God, but then we don't act like it. And we don't want anybody to tell us what's right or wrong. And this is getting eaten up. People in Genesis struggle with this. And so as we walk through these sacred words of the Bible, we walk through the words, we see maybe some of these over and over again. And these 5 lies that he works through Genesis, they still work on us today. And the question boils down, I said at the beginning, the main question is, do you believe God or do you fall for one of Satan's lies? And really the stories in Genesis are boiled down to that. Noah. Will Noah believe God and build the ark, or is he going to follow the crowd? Abraham. Is Abraham going to leave his country and believe in God's promise, or is he going to make managerial mistakes over and over again like he does with Sarah and Hagar? This is the question that comes down to it. Is Lot going to believe the angels and leave Sodom, or is he going to hang around? Are you going to believe what God says? Will Jacob believe the vision that he sees about God and become a decent human being and stop stealing and running away from his family? Is he gonna believe God and do that? And these stories, these events that we keep reading about in Genesis, all come up to, will you believe God, or will you fall for one of these lies that Satan just keeps telling us? All of these stories we read really come down to that. And so the question to us is do we believe God? Same question comes to us that goes to all of those characters that we read about in Genesis. Is do we believe God that he's going to supply us with all our needs, and that there is a way, one way that's life and one way that's death. And that we follow Jesus, and we follow what he says, and that we're disciples of him, and not just, to the letter, not just like the Pharisees were, but that we follow him in our hearts, and we want to be his disciples, and we want to figure out what that means. And true disciples listen to the story, and they listen to his stories, and they read through his words, because knowing the words is knowing the teacher. And allows us to determine between the lies of Satan or believing God. And so that's the question for us. It's the same question that all these people in Genesis struggle with. Is do we believe God, or do we follow one of Satan's lies?